Hello and welcome to the Azure series, and in this chapter we are going to talk about the basic building blocks of Azure networking. So what we are going to achieve today, so this is our targeted architectural diagram which we are going to implement for our Azure networking concept. So first we are going to see how to create your resource group and how to attach those resource group with our billing subscription. After that, we are going to create our VNet. In the VNet, we will be creating our public subnet, private subnet, and in those subnets, we will be creating the network security group along with our route table. And at last, we are going to provision the virtual machine inside our public subnet as well as our private subnet. And once those virtual machines are provisioned, then we will try to access those virtual machines from our local laptop. So there is a lot to cover in this particular chapter, and I'll post all the timestamp into the description section so that you can jump to that particular specific section. So let's start from the scratch and wipe all the components from this diagram. To start with our first component, which is our Azure Cloud. So this is the block which you see onto the screen. This is our Azure account. So I'm assuming that you have already signed up for your Azure account. Here you can see onto the screen, this is my Azure dashboard. So you can do the sign up for your Azure account through your GitHub account, or either you can use your Microsoft account also for doing the sign up. So I'll leave it up to you how you do the sign up, and all of the activities which I'm doing right now onto this particular account through my free tier subscription or the free credits which I have received from Azure. Let's move ahead and see the next component. So here we are going to create a resource group. So let me explain this resource group also over here. So resource group is just a logical unit where you can club the resources. Here is an example to explain the logical grouping of our resource group. So here you can see I have created a resource group, and in that resource group you can create a multiple VNets, and in those VNets you can create a multiple resources. So here is an example where I have created a 2 VNets, and in those VNet we have a subnet, and in those subnet you can create resources like a virtual machine or any other resources. And that resource group is going to be mapped with your subscription, and that subscription is going to be mapped with your credit card which you will be attaching with your Azure account. Although onto this screen you can see a single resource group, but in reality you can create a multiple resource group, and all of those resource group will be attached to a particular subscription which will eventually leads to your billing or credit card account. So that all of the resource group is attached to single source from where it can be billed and it can be invoiced. So this is how this whole setup works, and there is a one more example I could show you of resource group. So here you can see I have created a 2 resource group, and in those resource group I have created a 2 separate VNets, and also these resource group will be attached to a subscription, and that will eventually leads to your single billing account. So this resource group is totally depends upon you, what's your use case and how you want to segregate the resources for those particular resource group. Let's not overcomplicate the thing, so let's go ahead and create our own resource group onto our Azure portal. Here is my Azure portal, and in the search box you can type resource group, click on the resource group over here, and here you can see there are a couple of resource group which I have already created, but I'm just going to create a new one. So click on create over here, and here in the resource group name you can enter the name, but be careful, here is the subscription. So here you can see there is a subscription which I have already created when I signed up for my Azure account, so which you can also do from here. So I'll just open a new tab over here just to show you the subscription. So here if you type the subscription, click on the subscription. So here you can see this is the subscription which I have created for my Azure account, which is Rahul Wagh Azure subscription. But if you want to create a new subscription, then you can also create it from here, and once you click on add, then here you can create another subscription for your new setup or new account. Let's get back to our resource group creation. So I'll close this tab over here, and if you go over here, this is our create resource group. So here I have selected the subscription. The resource group name I'm just going to choose is demo VNet Azure, and here we need to select the region. So I'm just going to choose the nearest for me. So I'm just going to use Europe North, and you can choose whatever nearest location for your based on your geographical location. After that, click on next tags. So tags are optional. If it's really needed, then you can assign some meaningful tags for your resource group. Then click on review next, and here you can see the validation is green now, and then you can click on create, and that will create our resource group. So here you can see our resource group has been created. Click on this particular resource group, and here these are the details associated with our resource group. And here you can see all of the resources list is completely empty because we have not created any resource within that resource group that we are going to create pretty soon. Let's move ahead and see what is the next component we need to create. And here we need to create a VNet, and that VNet is our virtual network. So whenever we create a virtual network, then we need to define a IP range, which we call it as a CIDR. So here, this is the IP range which we are going to assign, which is 10.0.0.0/16, which means this is the IP range which will be responsible for all the resources which we will be creating inside this virtual network. And if you don't know like what is CIDR and how the CIDR or IP ranges are calculated, then I would recommend you to follow this particular video where I have explained like how the CIDR calculation work, how the IP ranges are calculated, and how you can create your own CIDR range and assign it to your virtual network. So this is the video I would highly recommend to watch if you don't know CIDR. Anyway, let's get back to our topic. So here we need to create a VNet, which is our virtual network. So for that, let's get back to our Azure portal, and here in the search box, either you can go to home page, and here you can type VNet, then click on VNet over here, and here you need to click on create VNet. And as I told you, you need to select the subscription, and then you need to select the resource group. So here I have already created the subscription, and also I have created the resource group. So I have selected both of it, and then click on next over here. And here we need to specify some of the checkbox. I'll try to keep it minimal so that you understand the concept rather than focusing on the advanced concept. So virtual network encryption, I'm just gonna leave it. I'm just not gonna enable the encryption, but if you really want the security onto your virtual network, then you can enable it. Azure Bastion, I'll cover into the upcoming chapter, so just skip that one also. Azure Firewall, just skip that one also. DDoS protection, I'm also gonna skip as of now because we are just focusing on the VNet subnet part of it. Okay, then click on next over here. So here is the CIDR range which I was talking about. So here is the IP range, which is 10.0.0.0/16, and here you can see it is allowing me to have 65,536 IP addresses. So if I reduce the number, to 8, then I'll get more IP ranges, and all of this calculation I have explained into this particular video, where you can see that if IP ranges is ending with 24, then you will get 256 IP. If it is ending with 16, then you will get a 65,536 IP address, and if it is ending with 8, then you will get around I think it's a 16 million IP addresses from that particular CIDR range. So just refer to this calculation of CIDR over here. Anyway, so I'll just keep it around 16 over here. So I'll get 65,000 IP addresses. Subnet, there is a default subnet, but we are just starting everything from the scratch. So I'm just going to delete this over here. We are going to create our own subnet. All right. So here we have defined the IP addresses range for our virtual network. Then click on next over here. Tags, again, it's optional. Then click on next. And here it will just take, there are some basic thing which is missing. So let's get back to our, okay, so virtual network name we have not assigned. That's why it was not allowing us. So here we need to enter the virtual network name. So here I'm just gonna input dev demo VNet EU N1. So here I'm keeping the EU N1 for Europe North, or I can keep EUN also, or if you make it a little bit more useful, then you can keep it Europe North as well. So this is the name which I'm assigning to my VNet. Click on next. Again, go through the same settings. Next, next, and just this validation will complete in a minute, and then click on create over here. And it will take around a couple of minutes to create that particular VNet. And once the VNet is created, then you will be redirected to the home page of our VNet. So here you can see this is the name of my VNet, which you can see, which is this one over here. And yeah, these are the details which is generated after creation of our VNet, which you can also verify from here. If you go over here, then type VNet, go to virtual network, and here you can see this is the VNet which we have just created. Let's move ahead and see what are the next component which we need to create. So the next component which we are talking about is the subnet. So here we will be creating one public subnet and one private subnet.
A short pause over here. If you're liking this Azure series, then I have recently launched my Udemy course, which includes 60 plus chapter, and I always keep on adding new chapter to that particular Udemy course, which you can see over here. And this course will take you from a beginner to the advanced level. So if you really want to excel your cloud journey in Azure, then please considering checking out this particular course, and I'll post the link of this particular course into the description section. Now let's get back to the topic.
So let's get back to our Azure portal, and here again we need to go to VNet because our subnets will be created within the virtual network. So click on the virtual network and select the virtual network which we have just created, which is this one. So I'm just going to select the virtual network, and here in the settings, here you will find the options of settings. So click on settings and here go to subnets, click on the subnet, and here you can see there are no subnets which has been created so far, and now we are going to create our public and private subnets. Let's start with our public subnet. So click on plus subnet over here. Subnet purpose, I'm just going to keep it default over here. I'm just not going to choose anyone over here. The name, I'm just gonna keep name which is something similar. So here I'm just gonna choose dev demo public subnet, and I'm just gonna suffix it with a Europe North so that I know where it is going to be created. The next thing is the IP ranges. So here again, if you take a look onto the diagram, then this is the IP range which I'm just gonna assign, which is /24. So if you increase the number of like a CIDR range which is ending with 24 now, then your IP ranges will reduce. So once you end up with a 24, then you will get 256 IPs within that particular subnet. So if you remember, let me show you that one. So if the CIDR range is ending with 16, then you have a 65,000 IP address. So our CIDR range of our VNet is ending with 16, so it has a 65,000 IP addresses, but our subnets are a sub part of our virtual network, so we can keep the IP ranges which is lesser than the /16. So for that, I'm just going to choose /24, which means I will have a 256 IPs within that particular subnet. So for that region, I'm just keeping or ending with the /24 for both my public as well as for my private subnet. So let's get back to our subnet settings. So here we have assigned the name. So let's go ahead and change. So this is the IPv address range. So this is our VNet IP range, which is this one. And here's the starting address. So this is where we are going to define our subnet IP range. So here I'm just going to start with 1.0 and then /24. Let's check with our diagram. So it is 1.0/24. After that, I'm just gonna check few more settings. Is it going to be IPv6? No, I'm not gonna do that. Private subnet, I'm just not gonna choose that one because we are just gonna create everything from our own settings. Okay, security, I'm just gonna keep everything none over here because we are gonna do everything by ourselves. Okay, after that, service endpoint, which we will cover later on, subnet delegation, let's keep everything as it's. We just gonna create a subnet with a proper subnet name and the IP range, which we already did. And then click on add over here. And it will take a couple of minutes to create that particular subnet. So here you can see our public subnet has been created. Let's create our private subnet as well. So again, click on plus subnet over here, choose the name. So I'm just going to paste the name and change it to private over here. The IP range of our VNet is 10.0.0.0/16, which is right. And here's the starting address of our subnet. So I'm just going to choose 2.0. So let's verify from our diagram. So yeah, it's ending with 2.0/24. After that, I'm just gonna keep everything as is. I am not gonna change anything. Just click on add over here, and it is going to create me another subnet, which is our private subnet. And here you can see this is our public and this is our private subnet. Let's move ahead and see what are the next component which we need to create. So the next component which we need to create is our route tables, and we will be creating a 2 route table because we have a 2 subnet. So we will be creating one public route table with internet access, and we will be creating another route table which is only for private subnet, which will not have any internet. So let's go and see how we can create our route table and associate those route table with our public subnet, the public route table, and the private route table with our private subnet. So go to your home page of your Microsoft Azure, and here in the search box you need to type route table. Click on the route tables over here. Then click on create route table. And here you again need to choose the subscription and the resource group. So here the subscription I have selected, which is Rahul Wagh Azure subscription, and the resource group which we have created is demo VNet Azure. Then we need to choose the region. Since we are working in the Europe North region, so I'm just going to stick with that particular region. So I'm just going to choose Europe North over here. The name of the route table, so I'm just going to keep the similar naming convention. So here I'm just going to use dev demo public RT is the short name for route table, and then suffix it with the Europe North. Propagate gateway route, so right now just keep it yes. We are going to cover these are into the advanced topics, so just keep the things default over here. Click on next over here. Tags, I'm just going to skip it. Click on next. And here our validation has been complete. Then we can click on create route table, and this will create our public route table. And here in this particular monitoring section, you can see deployment is in progress, and once it is done, then our route table will be created. And here you can see our route table has been created. So if you go and take a look again over here, so here is the route table option. So here you can see our route table is there, which is our public route table. Let's go ahead and create our private route table as well. So click on again the plus create route table over here. Select the resource group, which is our demo VNet Azure. Select the region. I'm just going to choose Europe North over here, and then select the name. So I'm just going to paste the similar name and change it to private now. Okay. Then click on next over here. Then skip the text part. Click next over here. And then click on create, and this will create our private route table, and it will take a couple of minutes, and I'll be back once this private route table has been created. Okay, so one key thing over here, so from the diagram you can see our route table are there, but those route table are not associated or attached with our subnet. So although we have created a public subnet, private subnet, and also we have created a public route table and private route table, but those are not attached with our subnet. So the next thing which we need to do is we need to attach those route table with those subnets. So how to associate? So for that you need to go to the route table dashboard. So here just type route tables over here, click on the route tables. Then we will start with our public route table, because our public route table, which is this one, is associated with our public subnet. So I'm just going to click on public route table over here. Then here in the settings section, you will find the options of a subnet. So click on this subnets over here, and here you will find the option for associate. So click on associate, and here you will find the option for a virtual network, which is our dev demo VNet Europe North, and here you will find the option for a subnet. So here this is our public route table, so here I'm just going to associate with our public subnet. So select this public subnet over here, click on OK, and here you can see the saving route table for subnet. So now it is associating our public subnet with our public route table, which you can see over here. Similarly, I'll go back to our route tables dashboard. This time I'm just going to open the private route table, go to the settings, which you can see over here, go to subnets, and here click on associate, and here I'm just going to associate with our private subnet, which is this one. So here you can see it will already tell you that which can be associated and which cannot be. Since we have already associated public, so it cannot be reassociated, then we are going to choose the private one. But like keep the things properly named so that you can logically attach all of these things together. So that's why keep the naming convention proper, because that will really help you to identify the resources. So here it is clearly telling us the private subnet which is available in our Europe North region. So that tells me clearly, hey, I'm working in Europe North region. This is our private subnet. This is our private route table. Click OK over here, and it will take a minute to associate with our private route table, and it's done. Now after associating our public route table with public subnet and private route table with a private subnet, we need to fix the internet access in our public subnet, which is associated with our public route table. So here you can see this is the resources which we have implemented so far in our VNet, Subnet and route table setup. So let's take a look how we can associate internet with our public route table so that our public subnet can have access to internet. So this is our public subnet and this is our public route table. So in that public route table, we need to create a route which will have access to internet. And to create a route, we need to assign the IP or a target destination IP address, and that IP address is going to be 0.0.0.0/0. So if you are using this IP range, then it denotes that anyone anywhere in the world can access that particular resource from our public subnet if that resource has a public IP, and this route table will have an internet access. So let's take a look how we are going to fix the route in our public route table. Here is my Azure portal, and in the search box you need to type again the route tables over here, and here we need to go to public route table. And here in the public route table, in the settings section, you will find the options for our routes. Click on the routes, then click on add over here. And here we need to type the route name. So I'm just going to type internet. Destination type is IP address because we need to enter the IP address of our internet so that everyone can access it. So the IP range is 0.0.0.0/0. Okay. The next hop type is internet. Here we need to choose the internet and then click on add over here. So now our public route table has access to internet. So any resource which will be deployed inside our public subnet will have access to internet if we provide a public IP address to it. Let's move ahead and try to deploy some virtual machine inside those subnets. So here I'm just going to create some virtual machine inside our subnet which we have set up so far. So first of all, I'm just going to create a virtual machine inside my public subnet and try to access that virtual machine through my local laptop. To create a virtual machine, you need to go to the home page, and here you need to type the virtual machines over here. Click on this virtual machine, then click on create over here, create Azure virtual machine, and then you need to choose the subscription and the resource group. So subscription, I'm just going to choose this one, and the resource group, which is demo VNet Azure, which we have created in this particular demo. Then the virtual machine type, so I'm just going to use Ubuntu VM. I'm just going to put public also because I will be creating this virtual machine into the public subnet. Region Europe North because that's where I'm working. Availability zone, I'm just keeping it default. Then image type, which is Ubuntu, which I will be using. You can change the image type also from if you want to use the Windows or CentOS or Red Hat or some other virtual machines as well. We are going to take a look onto the Windows part later, but in this particular session, we are just going to focus on how to set up your virtual machine in a subnet which you have just created. All the security part which can be taken later on, but the idea is to get yourself familiar with the resource creation within the subnet and the VNet which you have just created. Okay. Size, I'm just going to stick with the minimum so that I will be charged the minimum prices. Then authentication type, because once you provision a machine, then you need to have like a username and password. But I would highly recommend to use the SSH keys based authentication so that you can use that SSH keys to access your virtual machine. And I would like to generate the SSH key from Azure. So I will choose this option, generate new key pair. Also, you can generate your own SSH keys as well. But anyway, just stick with this option, generate new key pair. And after that, the name of the key pair, which is Ubuntu public VM key. So that's the name. You can change it also if you want to have a custom name with your public and the private key. Okay. After that, the select inbound port, so I'm sticking with the 22. So that is going to be our network security group, which will allow us to communicate on the port 22 so that we can access our virtual machine. So if you take a look onto this particular diagram, then I'm talking about this NSG, which is our network security group. So here I'm just keeping the inbound port on 22 open. I can also keep it none as well, and later we can also create the network security group. But let's for the time being allow on port 22, which is this one. Okay, I'll show you like how you can modify and change the network security group later also. Click on next disks. So here I'm just sticking with the 30 gigs of storage associated with my virtual machine, and the key management is platform managed key. I'm just sticking everything default. I'm just changing the minimum thing which is needed to provision my virtual machine. That's it. After that, click on next on networking, which is important because that's where we are going to set up or assign the correct VNet subnet to our virtual machine. So here the virtual network we are going to use is demo VNet Europe North, which is a VNet which we have created. The subnet we are going to use the public one, which is this one, because this is the public subnet where we have internet access, which I'm talking about, this one. So this is the public subnet we are talking about. Okay, so that's why I'm just provisioning into this particular subnet. Public IP, so here I just need to I need to assign the public IP for that particular virtual machine so that I can access that particular virtual machine. Apart from that, and I see public inbound group which is 22. I'm just keeping it default over here, and I'm just gonna choose all the default option. Load balancing, no, we are not gonna touch the load balancing yet. Click on next management over here, and identity, Microsoft Entra ID, auto shutdown, backup, guest OS update. So just keep everything default, don't change anything. Click on next monitoring. So alerts, no, we don't want anything right now. Again, go to advanced over here, and here if you see the custom data, which we are going to take a look later, so I'm just going to skip everything over here also, and then click on next tags. So tags, it's optional, it's up to you. I'll just skip it, click next, and see if the validation has passed. It will say validation has passed, and this is the amount it will be charging you. So it is going to be 0.01 USD per hour. Okay, then after that you just need to verify all of these details, and after that you just need to click on create over here. And here it will say, so I have asked Azure to generate the public key and the private key. So now it has generated the key, and now it will allow me to download the private key on my local laptop. So I will click on download private key, and here you can see our private key has been downloaded, which we are going to use to access that virtual machine. Okay. In the meantime, our deployment is in progress, so I'll be back once this deployment is ready and our virtual machine is accessible to us. Alright, so now my virtual machine is up and running, so I'll just go to the home page of my virtual machine dashboard. So here you can see our virtual machine is ready, and it has got the public IP address as well over here. So click on this virtual machine over here, and here you will find all the details which are associated or once it has been created. So this is the public IP address which we are going to use, and how to connect to that particular virtual machine. So here you need to click on connect over here, click on connect, and here there are a couple of options. So I'm just going to use the SSH way of you connecting to my virtual machine. So here, which is, I'm just going to use the native SSH. There is a Azure Bastion service also, which we are going to cover later, but let's stick with the very basic options, which is very generic and which is used quite widely everywhere. So I'm just going to use the native SSH option. Click on select over here, and here you will find the option or command to connect to that particular virtual machine, which is this command, which you need to copy. So here we need to supply the path of our private key, and then we need to supply the username and the IP address, which is our public IP address. So I'm just going to copy this particular command from here and go back to my terminal. So here just verify whether you have your private key there or not. So here you can see our key is already there, which is this one, Ubuntu public VM key. Let's also verify the permission over here of that particular key, and that public key has a read and write permission. So we need to reduce this permission, otherwise we will not be able to use this key. So we need to make it a read only. So I'll just clear it, and here we need to use the command chmod, and here we need to change it to 400, and then you need to supply the key name. And again, let's verify the permission, and now it is only read only key. So now we can use that particular key to access our virtual machine. Clear it, and then I'm just going to copy the command once again, paste over here, but here we need to change few things over here. So here we need to remove this path, because here we need to supply the key name, so that is Ubuntu. So the command is quite simple, SSH followed with I, and then here you need to specify the key name, and there you need to specify the username and the public IP of that particular machine. And after that you just need to hit enter over here. I'll just go ahead then and hit enter. It will ask, are you sure you want to connect? Type yes. And here you can see we are able to access our virtual machine, which is our Azure user with the name, and this is our Ubuntu public VM. That's the name of our virtual machine. And here you can verify the details. Here is the IP address, which is our private IP address, which is assigned from our public subnet. So 10.0.1.4. And if you take a look onto the diagram, then here you can see the range of our public subnet is 10.0.1.0. So it has assigned 1.4. So it is lying within our public subnet. So that was a short session on how to set up your VNet, subnet, route table, network security group, and how to provision your public virtual machine inside your public subnet. In the next session, we are going to take a look how we can provision our virtual machine into private subnet and how we can access that private virtual machine from our public subnet. So that is we are going to cover into the next session. And if you have any question, then please put down into the comment section and I'll try to answer those questions. So see you into the next session. Till then, take care and bye bye.